Thanks, dear viewers, for joining us on this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Équinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital. Dwelling our top stories in this edition of the news, the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, decides to reduce cancel some prison sentences of some Cameroonians. This information is contained in a presidential decree signed today, and we'll also be taking a look at the fight against COVID-19 elsewhere on the African continent. Cameroon's head of state has finally listened to calls that have been rising to the sky from civil society and political leaders, as well as non-governmental organizations who have been calling for the liberation of prisoners, persons detained in different incarceration centers across the country, in order to avoid what they consider as a catastrophe that could emerge from a possible COVID-19 case in one of the incarceration centers. And the civil society leaders have been talking about the overcrowded nature of prisoners and the risk of having a COVID-19 case in one of those incarceration centers. According to them, this is going to inflate the figures of COVID-19 confirmed cases and death cases that have been rising since the COVID-19 outbreak in the Republic of Cameroon. And the President of the Republic, in a presidential decree signed today, has decided to reduce and/or cancel prison sentences of some of the detainees. Innocent as a files in details.
Paul Biya's decree of this Wednesday, April 15th, 2020, provides commutations of prisoner sentences across Cameroon. He began with commutation of the death sentence to life imprisonment in favor of persons initially sentenced to death, commutation to 25 years in favor of those initially sentenced to death and whose sentence has already been commuted to life imprisonment, commutation to 25 years in favor of those initially sentenced to life imprisonment that has not yet been commuted, remission of 5 years in favor of persons initially sentenced to death and whose sentence has already been commuted to a term of imprisonment, remission of 5 years in favor of those initially sentenced to life imprisonment that has already been commuted to a term of imprisonment above 10 years, remission of 5 years in favor of persons initially sentenced to life imprisonment that has already been commuted to a term of imprisonment below or equal to a term of 10 years, remission of 3 years in favor of persons initially sentenced to a term of imprisonment equal to or above 10 years, remission of 3 years in favor of those initially sentenced to a term of imprisonment below 10 years but above 5 years, remission of 2 years in favor of persons initially sentenced to a term of imprisonment below 5 years but above 3 years, remission of 1 year in favor of persons initially sentenced to a term of imprisonment below or equal to 3 years, remission of 1 year of sentence in favor of persons who have to serve a term of imprisonment below or equal to 3 years. Article 2 of the Presidential Decree concerns applications of the remission provided in Article 1. It entails minors within the meaning of criminal law who have been sentenced will in addition benefit from 1/3 of the applicable remission. In Article 3A, the commutation provided under Articles 1, 2, and 3 takes effect from this April 15th, 2020. This is also to mark start of calculation of the remaining term of imprisonment to be served. Article 3B entails that, in case of consecutive sentences, the provisions of Article 1 shall apply to the sentence being served from this April 15th. Where the person is free, they shall apply to the sentence to be served first. In Article 3C, in case of concurrent sentences or remission, shall apply to the sentence to be served. Article 4 stipulates that Article 1 shall not apply to fugitives at the date of signatory of the decree, recidivists, offenders, persons imprisoned and sentenced for an offense committed once in detention, people sentenced for offenses concerning security of the state, offenses of Chapter 2 of Law Number 2014/028 of the 23rd of December 2014 on the suppression of acts of terrorism, misappropriation of public property, corruption, indulgence, favoritism, influence, interest in grant, undue influence and undue demand, counterfeit notes and coin, customs or tax fraud, fraud in official and other examinations, fraudulent exports of currency, illegal possession of traffic of toxic waste, illegal possession and trafficking of narcotic, breaches against legislation on arms, breaches against forestry legislation, torture, rape, sexual assault, and pedophilia. Article 5 holds that the Minister of State, Minister of Justice, Keeper of the Seals, is responsible with the implementation of this presidential decree.
And lawyers of detainees of the Anglophone crisis have said from all indications with regards to the details in that presidential decree, their clients are not concerned by this presidential clemency, are not concerned with this presidential clemency because the crimes or the crimes they are accused to have committed do not fall within the range of this presidential decision. And the President of the Republic of Cameroon takes this decision at a time when political and civil society leaders, non-governmental organizations have been calling for the liberation of prisoners in Cameroon within the context of the fight against COVID-19 in the country. And the COVID-19 figures continue rising in Cameroon, and the number of those successfully treated is also rising. Cameroon now records 165 persons successfully treated from the COVID-19. 28 were successfully treated yesterday, and the number of deaths has also increased to 17, including 2 who were treated successfully or who left the hospital yesterday. And administrative authorities across the National Triangle have been intensifying the fight against COVID-19 with sensitization and repressive measures that are being implemented with regards to the violation of government's anti-COVID-19 measures. Over 20 measures taken by the government of the Republic of Cameroon to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. Now we're taking you to the Fako division in the southwest region of the country, where our correspondent Davidson Maimo files in details.
With an already dwindling economy caused by the deepening Anglophone crisis that has almost paralyzed the economy of southwest and northwest regions respectively, now the coronavirus pandemic that has shut down the entire economy of the nation. A good chunk of the people living in the southwest and northwest regions are living below poverty line. This explains why the Limbe City Council, in collaboration with all 3 subdivisional councils backed by the Fako administration, had to go down to the field, distributing free face masks and assisting the local population who cannot afford to have one. According to the Limbe City Mayor, Motanga Andrew Monjimba, the symbolic gesture is aimed at encouraging all Limbe City dwellers to have a face mask and equally to enforce government decisions in preventing and protecting her citizens against the coronavirus pandemic that has shown its ugly face in Cameroon.
I want to tell this population that these masks are not for decoration. They are not for fancy. They should always put on their mask to protect themselves and protect their neighbors.
However, the senior divisional officer for Fako, Ngamba Emmanuel Edo, was taken aback with a number of school-going age children seen at the street and market hawking.
Are you going to school? You take your pet now, you go back home. Huh? I want to call on all parents in Fako division that school children shall remain at home. They should not be found in market. We are going to send a squad, a team, to take all these school children in market to police stations. And now the parents shall be called.
To some city dwellers, the move is a good one, but prayed government to do more.
We thank the government so much for this simple gesture that they have made, but we need more of it because they say that we should stay at home to be safe. If we need to stay at home, we need to be accompanied.
It should be noted that the government of Cameroon has declared moving out of your home without a face mask a crime, punishable with a fine.
And civil society leaders in Cameroon have been urging the government to take accompanying measures or other measures that will facilitate the respect of the government's anti-COVID-19 measures. The president and founder of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, Barrister Agbo Bala, one of the civil society leaders and legal minds in Anglophone Cameroon, has been urging government to produce face masks and distribute free to the population, especially to the poor and low-income earners who are unable to afford for the mask every day, according to the norms prescribed by medical experts. Derek Jato reports from Boya.
The Cameroon government compulsory measure for all in her territory to put on face mask, critics say is laudable, but sees an issue on the side of the government. To Violet Fokum, director of the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, the Cameroon government at least was supposed to distribute these face masks to all for free.
But the issue was, we forgot the point that many underprivileged will not be able to will have access, will be able to afford this face mask.
And her center is working on something in that direction.
So we took it as part of a humanitarian gesture to produce 5,000 masks to share to the underprivileged. So today we have about 20 fellows assisting in the production of these 5,000 masks.
And concerning this face mask project, the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, with its headquarters in Boya, has its targeted population, those displaced by the Anglophone crisis in the region, for a start.
The first target is the groups of underprivileged and all the displaced.
Though just recently created, this fashion and designing center to train victims of the Anglophone crisis is today playing a big role in the fight against another crisis, the coronavirus pandemic in Cameroon.
The Rijato reporting there from Boya. Here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, the new commander of the Littoral Gendarmerie Legion, Colonel Bikali Pierre-Marie, has already sent his boys on the field. His collaborators are already moving through the streets of the country's economic capital to enforce the respect of the government's anti-COVID-19 measures. Today, they were on the streets of the Douala 1 municipality. Details with Makule Fogwe.
Law enforcement officers in the city of Douala trying to enforce the respect of one of government's COVID-19 measure, which is the obligatory wearing of face mask. The security officers made it tour in several markets and streets across the city of Douala to sensitize the population on what awaits them when next they will be caught without a face mask.
Des sanctions que vous encourez si vous ne mettez pas de masque, non?
Those who will be caught without face mask will have to pay the sum of 6,000 CFA francs, and for those who have their face mask kept in their pockets or bags, they will have to pay the sum of 2,000 CFA francs. Today, we are sensitizing the population. As from tomorrow, defaulters will have to pay that amount.
Et si vous n'en avez pas, vous payez 6 000 francs.
For those who were not in possession of their face mask, the security personnel forced them to get one.
On vous retrouve encore demain sans masque. Les amendes vont de 6 000 francs à 2 000 francs.
Je remercie d'abord le gouvernement.
I thank the government for taking such a measure. It is for our own security. The mask protects us from being infected. I really thank the government for the efforts they are putting in. The operation was supervised by the newly installed commander of the littoral region.
We have to be sure that the governmental measure of response to the coronavirus are well implemented in our region.
The population have been called upon to respect the law. If not, they will be punished accordingly.
Colonel Bikele Pierre-Marie, new commander of the Littoral Gendarmerie Legion, took over command from Colonel Ahanda yesterday, and he said he has 3 major assignments linked to the security crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and the spilling over into the southwest region of the country, and of course the security challenges within the town of Douala and the entire littoral region, and of course the fight against COVID-19, and he's already at work. Now we are going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of Cameroon, and one of the country's employers' unions, ECAM, has proposed 4 measures that can help mitigate the devastating impact of COVID-19 on small and medium-sized enterprises in the country. For me, Armstrong Sander, fires in details.
The Cameroon Business Patronage (ECAM) foresees a devastating effect of the coronavirus pandemic on the small and medium-sized enterprises sector across the country. For Cameroon to escape the looming disaster, ECAM says 4 strategic economic measures must be adopted and implemented across the country. Number 1, ECAM says governments should identify enterprises operating in strategic sectors like health, food, transport, communication, water and electricity in order to ascertain their capacity to offer goods and services of basic necessity throughout the crisis period. Number 2, the Cameroon Business Patronage says governments should organize consultations with the subsectors outlined above in order to identify, analyze and resolve their problems, especially problems related to techniques, fiscal, customs, social and financial, which could compromise their capacity to effectively function. Thirdly, the government must create a mechanism to collect and store consumer goods of basic necessity which are commonly commercialized by individual operators of the informal sector in order to redistribute when need be in a sanitized and more serious environment. This ECAM believes will also limit the mobility of actors in more traditional markets during the crisis period. Fourthly, the government should put in place a system to collect and deliver commercial goods to transport companies in order to limit contacts and movements of persons during the coronavirus period. Lastly, the Cameroon Business Patronage says the government of Cameroon should, as a matter of urgency, identify and list out enterprises in difficulties, be they formal or informal, in order to better prepare a program to relaunch the economy after the coronavirus period. The Cameroon Business Patronage (ECAM) for over 10 years has made it its mission to strengthen the place of the small and medium-sized enterprises at the heart of the Cameroonian economy.
Elsewhere on the African continent, Malawi has declared a 21-day coronavirus lockdown within the context of the fight against the coronavirus in that country, and the order takes effect on April 18, 2020. People will be required to acquire permission to leave their homes. And Now, in Tanzania, the country's Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa has announced the cancellation of this year's Union Day celebrations, which commemorates the merging of Tanganyika and Zanzibar to become Tanzania. It is one of the most important dates in the country's calendar, celebrated annually on the 26th of April, and President John Magufuli has also instructed that 500 million Tanzanian shillings set as a budget for the Union Day celebrations should be relocated to the fight against coronavirus in the country. And he also extended the closure of schools, colleges and universities indefinitely. Now, in Kenya, the police boss of the country has said the grace period for everyone not wearing face masks has expired, and arrests will now take place starting tomorrow. Inspector General Hilary Mutyambai said people had been given enough time to buy the mask, and enforcement will now begin. The Ministry of Health gazetted that anyone found in public places without a mask will be fined 20,000 Kenyan shillings or face a 6-month jail term. And we're now talking something else, notably the reconstruction of the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. And Paul Tassong, Minister Delegate at the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Regional Development of Cameroon, and John Donatus, former mayor of Kumbu in the northwest region of the country, the persons charged with the responsibility to lead the reconstruction of the crisis-hit regions were commissioned into their functions by the Prime Minister Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute in Yaoundé today. And while installing them, the Prime Minister urged the leaders to constitute teams that will be deployed for that purpose to the northwest and southwest regions of the country, and also to submit their plan of action as soon as possible. The reconstruction will require over 90 billion francs CFA. And in the report coming up next from me, Armstrong Sander takes us into the nooks and crannies of government's reconstruction plan for the crisis-hit northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon.
Talking to the press after his appointment to head the presidential plan to reconstruct and develop the northwest and southwest regions, abbreviated as the PPRD, Minister Paul Tassong outlined what the government of Cameroon plans to do in order to catch up the delayed development of the war-torn northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. In his capacity as coordinator of the PPRD, Minister Paul Tassong said the project will see the reconstruction of some 12,000 destroyed private houses, 115 health centers, 350 schools, 400 water points, 40 bridges, 500 kilometers of low-tension power lines, 600 kilometers of rural roads, and 45 markets in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions. According to the government minister, the over 3 years war has retarded the economic growth of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, noted for the production of coffee, cocoa, maize, cassava, fish, livestock, potatoes, plantains, beans, vegetables, yams and bananas. Regretting that the southwest, for example, moved from the first to the second cocoa producer in Cameroon because of the Anglophone crisis, Minister Paul Tassong revealed that about some 25,000 kilometers of farmlands needed attention in the northwest and southwest regions, highlighting that the priority projects were designed based on data collected by the two regional governors. Paul Tassong said the statistics could be upgraded, as a lot has happened even after the data was collected. Paul Tassong also revealed that the project will be financed by the government of Cameroon and many financial partners who've shown interest in the initiative. He also disclosed that the presidential plan to reconstruct the war-torn northwest and southwest regions is different from the government of Cameroon's humanitarian assistance plan for the northwest and the southwest regions.
And Paul Tasson, coordinator of the reconstruction plan of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, says that work will begin in villages where relative peace has been restored. We're wrapping up the first part of this newscast with this press release from the Cameroon Alcohol Producers Association, and it reads: in the face of the health crisis in Cameroon and the rest of the world, the alcoholic beverages industry in Cameroon, regrouped under the CAPA, that is the Cameroon Alcohol Producers Association, informs all our stakeholders that we welcome the measures adopted by government authorities to limit the spread of COVID-19 and ensure optimal management of this crisis without giving into panic. The industry, composed of the following key players: and Société Anonyme des Brasseries du Cameroun SABC, Groupe Guinness Cameroun, Union Camerounaise des Brasseries, Société de fabrication des vins du Cameroun Sofa Vin, and Société Camerounaise de Fermenterie Femancam. As a response, or as a responsible and community-minded industry, the health of our employees, our customers, our consumers, and all our partners remains our top priority. CAPA companies are essential partners of the state in the development of the country in several areas, and we intend to continue playing our role as actors of development, and we therefore wish to reassure all our distributors, retailers, supermarkets, and all sales outlets, as well as consumers, that we will continue our activities of production and distribution of beverages in strict compliance with the instructions and rules adopted by the government of Cameroon for the well-being of the people. Furthermore, in response to the economic emergency and in line with the preventive measures, CAPA companies recommend that our customers respect all the regulations put in place by competent administrative authorities and ensure the implementation of hygiene and social distancing guidelines by consumers at all points of sales. That was a press release from the Cameroon Alcohol Producers Association. That's it for the first part of this newscast. Talking Point is up next. Thanks for staying with us in Talking Point. Our guest today is a member of the Cameroon diaspora, a political critic. Paddy Asanga is joining us from Hamburg, Germany. Hello, Paddy.
Good evening, Babila, and thanks for thinking about me. And I'm very, very pleased that you are bringing me up for this important debate that has to do with the state of our nation. You know, it has been a while, but I cannot come in without paying homage to one of the pillars of democracy in Cameroon, that is Honorable Mbandam, who died yesterday. So, with that said, I am very, very pleased that you people are respecting the rules that have been put in place by the WHO World Health Organization, and that it is being implemented forcefully. So I am happy that you are still alive. You have not been affected by COVID-19. I would like to come back home and meet you alive, and you keep doing the good job that you have been doing with Équinoxe Television. That was my introduction. You're welcome.
Paddy Asanga, what is the situation as far as COVID-19 is concerned in Hamburg, where you are?
COVID-19 in Hamburg, we have dotted cases. We are not totally confined. Wearing face masks is not mandatory, and people are partially vacating to their activities. I think that it is due to the fact that several measures have been taken and many companies have shut down. Government offices have shut down. Everything is being done electronically, so people don't really have that contact with one another. When you get into the trains, into the buses, the density that you used to have during rush hour doesn't exist. And that's why I can talk to you now and not from a hospital bed.
What about the treatment of Cameroonians and other Africans by authorities there in Hamburg and the entire Germany?
Germany and Hamburg and Germany in particular is a federal country, and the independent federal governments, they have taken measures, and there is no discriminatory measures that is going on in Germany like you will find, you will see it happening in China. Nobody is being harassed. People are well educated, they are well informed, and they respect the rules that have been put in place. If you go to the grocery stores and you want to purchase something, there is social distancing. You find sometimes very long queues at from 6 o'clock, people coming to buy what they would need to consume the next day, especially at the weekend. But as far as treating Africans is concerned, I think we are living in one of those countries that respect human rights, and I cannot complain as of now. Thank you.
What's your take on what's been happening to Africans in China?
It's happening in China. Africans living in China is a very, very sad situation. And the Chinese have this aggressive policy towards Africans. And when the Chinese come to our countries, get all the respect that you can give a stranger, but when we go to their country, they disrespect us. And I think that the Nigerian government or the Nigerian ambassador in China has done something very, very good, and other African countries follow suit. They should convocate the Chinese ambassadors in the various countries and tell them that it is not acceptable. If nothing is done, then the African population should take their responsibility and tell the Chinese that we don't want to be colonized, and you cannot come here and be bosses in our countries, run industries, run companies, and you treat us like slaves, like guinea pigs in your own country. It is something which is not acceptable, and as a Pan-Africanist, I think the African government, the African Union should step up and do something about it.
What should the African Union do? What should the African heads of states do at this point in time to put an end to this kind of treatment given to Africans abroad in other countries around the world?
We believe that the African Union should come out with a very strong communique and denounce, decry the way Chinese are treating our African brothers who are empowering their economy. You want to know that most of those people who are in China today, nobody wants to go to China to stay. They go to buy Chinese products which are not even, they don't have the quality of the products that they sent here in Europe, but Chinese are also in our country. So African Union and African head of state should come out in a strong communique, condemn that, and ask reparations for the damages that have been caused by these actions of some Chinese and Chinese authority to our African citizens. That should be done with immediate effect.
But dear Sanga, let's come back home now to talk strictly about the fight against COVID-19. For more than 4 months today, the COVID-19 figures have been speedily rising. The number of confirmed cases, the number of deaths, but also the number of persons successfully treated. Today, the number of dead victims of the COVID-19 in Cameroon stands at 17, with 2 other persons who died yesterday, and the number of persons successfully treated stands at 165. What do you think about all the measures, about 20 that government has taken this far to prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Babila, you want to know that I am not a fan of this Jacobinist government of Mr. Biya. I would never support its policies, its political policies, but during this period of harsh, where everybody in the world is waging a war against COVID-19, I think that we should keep our political differences aside and fight against COVID-19. When COVID-19 would be overthrown, or when COVID-19 would be over, then we can start politicking. The government has taken some measures which are good, but the government has not done enough. I just saw a decree today which said, which was trying to decongest the prisons in Cameroon. It is a good measure, but it is not enough. What the government has forgotten to do is that those measures are only going to release petty criminals who are in Konengi, but it is not also going to solve the political tensions that we have in our country. I want to think that the government should have gone further to use this opportunity and release some of those political detainees like Mancho BBC, Ben Terence, all those who were arrested before the famous Declaration of Independence. Those people have no place in jail. But as far as the measures are concerned, they are salutary if it is because they have to fight. We are fighting against COVID-19. But we must also take to consideration that we have a very tense socio-political situation, and everything should be taken at its face value. You cannot fight COVID-19 in a very tense political atmosphere. So releasing these petty criminals and abandoning those political prisoners in jail, I think it is the right step into the right direction, but it is not enough. So the government should go further to do something and make sure that this tension is taken at both fronts, releasing those petty criminals, reducing the incarceration population, and also, and I'm pleading, make sure that they do something to ease using this decree that has just been signed by Mr. Paul Biya. I want to believe that this decree is going to put an end to this political problem which is going on as to whether Mr. Biya is dead or alive. If Mr. Biya is dead or alive, it is not important for us for now, because if Mr. Biya dies tomorrow, Cameroon will still continue. If Padia Sanga dies tomorrow, Cameroon will still continue. So we have to fight COVID-19 and also fight to make sure that we transit from a Jacobin system of government to a federal system. Mr. Babila, you want to understand, if you want an example of what we call Jacobinism, you would find it today. You would see that Mr. Biya, as a Napoleon Bonaparte of Africa, he has everything in his hand. He controls the judicial, he controls the legislation, and sometimes even the executive. This decree comes to tell you that Mr. Biya is head of everything, and that is why we don't accept Jacobinism. Thank you.
But yes, Sanga, we can go ahead, please, but let's avoid giving some qualifications to a senior statesman like the President of the Republic, and referring to him as Napoleon Bonaparte and so on. But according to government, there are no political prisoners in Cameroon. But you think that detainees of the Anglophone crisis, Sisiku, Ayuk Tabe, Pen Terence, Mancho BBC, and all the others who are being detained in connection to the Anglophone crisis, and even those who are being detained for political reasons, notably those who were arrested after the last presidential election, post-presidential election manifestations, should be released. Why do you think that they should be released?
Mr. Babila, I am a humanist, and one of the things that we Africans have with us is the spirit of pardoning each other, talking to each other, what we call the fig tree, the peace tree. When you are looking for peace, you don't count the number of deaths. Some people will tell you that no justice, no peace. But I think that a time has come for us to reconcile all Cameroonians. You want to understand that, Mr. Babila, I'm not a Tontina, neither am I a Sardina. I am a Cameroonian, bona fide Abakwa boy, and I have a post-colonial identity that was legated on me, which I did not choose by the colonialists. So, in this context, people have done things which subjectively the judiciary system considers it the way it considers, but we don't have a perfect judiciary system. So it is time for us to sit down, sit up straight, speak truth to power, and ask them to do the right thing so that we ease the social, political atmosphere and fight coronavirus together. That's why the reason I think that we should stop throwing tantrums and sit together and look for lasting solutions that would not only fight coronavirus, but would also ease the socio-political tension.
Padi Asanga, what do you think should be done by the Cameroon government above what it has already done so far to put an end to the spread of coronavirus in Cameroon?
Yes, as I have been following up, you want to understand that we have an economy that's informal and people live from day to day. So everybody who had a registered business, or those people who are living from day to day, should create centers where people go there weekly and collect face masks to cover themselves. You take the quantity that you need for a week because it has become mandatory, so that people rush to those centers and nobody will have a reason to say that I am not carrying a face mask because I cannot afford it. There is a lot of things going on here in the diaspora. I am very, very pleased that if I will go be charged any or to be hospitalized. It should be the same thing. Cameroon. They should create centers where people will go there and collect those masks as preemptive measures, because there are people who cannot even afford a mask, even if it is 50 francs. That is the situation in our country. We must accept it, and we should put our hands on deck to make sure that those centers where people go on a weekly basis, collect masks for 7 days, and then go back home and make sure that they use this mask until a period we are declared COVID-19 free.
All right, Padi Asanga, last question before we go. Those in charge of executing or coordinating the execution of the reconstruction of the northwest and southwest regions of the country, Paul Tasson and John Donatus, have been commissioned into their functions and urged to put in place teams that will be deployed to those regions for that purpose, and also to submit the plan of action. What do you think about this reconstruction?
Talking about Minister Paul Tasson, I want to understand that Minister Paul Tasson comes from Libialem, and Libialem, one of those regions which has been very, very affected. So he knows what is going on there. Mr. John Donatus comes from Bui Division, and Bui Division is one of the areas in the northwest region that has been heavily affected. It is the right step into the right direction. But what I decry here is that we cannot be talking of reconstruction when we have not fully come to a compromise where we think that people should drop their guns. That is why we keep calling on our brothers and sisters who call themselves Ambazonia to drop their guns and to show some good faith, so that this reconstruction can go ahead and then dialogue continues. There was a major dialogue, and we want to get minor dialogues with all the belligerents, with all the people, those in the diaspora. There is a peace task force that has been created here in the diaspora, and that peace task force was created by some Ambazonians. We are talking to them. There are other initiatives at the home front. We think that we are almost getting to a point where Anglophones will sit together, talk to themselves, come to a solution, agree what would be the fate of Padi Asanga, those who ask people to chop people's hands, those who ask people to kidnap people for ransom, and Anglophones should first of all sit while this process is going on. There are areas where the reconstruction can start, and there are areas where reconstruction cannot take place because there are still pockets of resistance or fighting. So I think it is a right step in the right direction, but we should continue working hard to make sure that we call the government to book. We have taken the special, the House of Chiefs, we have pocketed it, and we will hang on the throat of the government to give us that federation. It is step by step, and nothing is gotten for free. We will continue the fight, but we are not going to kill people. We don't want to be political scavengers. We don't want to feed on people's corpses to achieve our political gains. Babila, I'm very, very pleased. Thank you, and thank you very much indeed.
Padia Sanga, political critic, member of the Cameroon diaspora, was one of the participants at the major national dialogue which took place in Yaoundé, bringing people from everywhere to find solutions to the Anglophone crisis. Thanks for talking to us from Hamburg in Germany. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Goodbye.